So what happened is, as these colonies, like the United States as it became, etc., and all the others around the world, as they were given independence, what was left out in those countries were the bloodline, under different names, the secret society network that manipulates the bloodline agenda, and those countries have gone on being controlled ever since. But because they have the ability to have a vote every 4 or 5 years, they don't realize they live in a tyranny. And that's how it works, the prison without the bars, and until it's exposed, it'll go on forever. And so these kind of people, especially the Rothschilds, they are major, major players in this. They are the middlemen for the manipulation of this reality from these entities mostly outside of this reality. And what they've created is like a global transnational corporation. What you have with a corporation is you have a headquarters somewhere in the world, and then in each country you have subsidiary companies of that headquarters, that central point. And all the subsidiaries in the world carry out the policy of the central point. Well, what these Illuminati hybrid family networks have done is create exactly the same, but instead of companies, they are secret society networks. So you've got the center of the web in Europe, for historical reasons, at operational level anyway, people at places like London, not the British government, the secret society centre in London. In Rome is another one, the Roman Church, Rome, and other points in Europe. And then in each country you have families from the network in those countries whose job it is to run the networks that control that country's business, banking, politics, media, all of it. And so what you have is, from this central point in Europe, the center of the web, all these different places and countries all over the world then impose on their country what is being dictated here. And that's why, as I travel around the world, I see the same things being introduced in different countries at the same time, overwhelmingly justified by the same excuses. It's all a global network. It can be symbolized too as a web, like I say, with the Rothschilds real close to the spider, and all these different strands on the web are different secret societies, different semi-secret societies, transnational corporations, and all the rest of it. So when you see all these different names of these corporations that dominate the world in so many ways, and the pharmaceutical cartel and the oil cartel and all the rest of it, the biotech cartel, they're all different names or different masks on the same one face. And so you have this structure where outside of visible light you have the reptilian control system, comes down through the Illuminati families, and they control the people in power to push the world in a certain direction. Another way of looking at it here. You see, all these different people, these fight among themselves and all the rest of it, though if it gets out of hand they get sorted. So these sit on the top of all these different countries. They control these different areas of their societies, and the people are then played off against each other. These buggers don't go to war, they tell these buggers to go to war. And if we stop going to bloody war, game over. But we do. Ridiculous. That's part of becoming conscious. So these people are just pawns in a game, in a way, genetic pawns in a game. They're just kind of shells to play out this agenda with invisible light. I mean, some batches are better than others, of course. So if you look at the principle of the Trojan horse, the symbol of the Trojan horse, coming into a society and not seeming to be what it is, though taking it over, and you put that on the face, well, you've pretty much got symbolically what we're talking about here. People send me pictures from around the world and stuff that they find on the internet and elsewhere, which have a kind of reptilian feel about them. I'm not saying these are reptilian eyes, it could be a trick of the light, but I've used it because it gives an indication of the number of people that have told me this all around the world, from all walks of life, how they've seen people shift from a human to a reptilian state, and especially the eyes are the first to go. They describe how the pupils become reptilian. And interestingly, a great friend of mine has an associate who, I don't agree with it, but he's been doing a research project to develop iris scan technology, and it led to him looking very deeply into 2,300 eyes. And he said he knew nothing about what I'm saying, probably never heard of me. And he said to my friend, the amazing thing was that about 4% appeared to be of reptilian type and appearance. And that is a recurring number, in my research anyway. 4-5% seem to be of this hybrid nature. So these people are reptilian hybrid human reptilians. And you look at the eyes, but behind the eyes are something else. I had an experience with this guy, Ted Heath. He was Prime Minister of Britain from 1970 to 74, took us into the European Union as it became. And it's a long story, I've told it before, but he looked at me in a dressing room in a television station, and as he looked at me, this is what his eyes did. His eyes went completely black, everything. And as I looked into his eyes, it must have been like that for, I don't know, maybe a minute, 2 minutes. And as I looked into his eyes, I said at the time, it was like looking into two black holes, because you couldn't make eye contact because there was no contact. And it was like, as I know now, looking through him into this other dimension where he was really controlled from. This man, Ted Heath, oh my goodness me. My goodness me. The children that guy has tortured and killed. And I've been saying this since 1998 in print, and he was alive for many, 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 many years after that. And nothing happened. Why? Because it's true. And so these people are like hiding behind human form. And hey, I rest my case. I rest my case. Ooh, you look tasty. And this lack of empathy in this hybrid DNA explains why these guys do what they do. Now, when you open your mind, instead of saying, it's not possible, it's ridiculous, when you open your mind and say, okay, I'm not going to just accept this stuff, but I'm going to flow with it and see where it goes, you find that this stuff I'm talking about is absolutely in your face when you bring it from the subliminal to the conscious. The oldest form of religious worship in the world has been taken back 70,000 years to an area of the Kalahari Desert in South Africa, and it is worship of the serpent or worship of the snake. This man, Reverend John Bathurst Dean, wrote a book, a very, very good book, 1933, called Worship of the Serpent, in which he studied serpent worship around the world. This was his conclusion. It appears then that no nations were so geographically remote or so religiously discordant, but that one and only one superstitious characteristic was common to all, that the most civilized and the most barbarous bowed down with the same devotion to the same engrossing deity, and that this deity either was or was represented by the same sacred serpent. It appears also that in most, if not all, the civilized countries where this serpent was worshipped, some fable or tradition which involved its history, directly or indirectly, alluded to the fall of man in paradise, in which the serpent was concerned. What follows then, but that the most ancient account respecting the cause and nature of this seduction must be the one from which all the rest are derived, which represent the victorious serpent, victorious over man in a state of innocence and subduing his soul in a state of sin, as he would call it as a reverend, into the most abject veneration and adoration of himself. Like I say, wherever you go, it comes up. You find obvious representations of the serpent gods. These were found in graves of the Ubaid people that preceded Sumer in what we now call Iraq. These were the Nagas, the shape-shifting reptilian people of Asia. The Druids used to worship a serpent god called Hu. If you play that word through, Hu man becomes serpent man, appropriately. The Egyptians used to worship serpent gods and represent their pharaohs as a result of that in this way. You had the cobra coming from the headdress there. You had the cobra head gear itself representing the snake. You had the belly of the cobra. The cobra is a constant common symbol of this serpent race. In Central America, you had Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent god, and the Mayan version of it was Kukulkan in places like Chichen Itza. Of course, right across Asia, Japan, China, etc., the very most dominant symbol of that part of the world is the dragon, which comes from this worship of the serpent gods. Folklore is full of serpent stories and what have you. When I first met Credo Mutwa, a long time ago now, he contacted me when I was going around South Africa, this Zulu shaman, the official historian of the Zulu nation, because he'd read in a book called The Biggest Secret that I'd introduced this reptilian stuff for the first time, and he said, Mr. David, how do you know? How do you know about the Chitahuri? And I didn't know about the Chitahuri. Tell me. And he told me the story of African history where the Chitahuri, which translates as children of the serpent or children of the python, had taken over the world in the very same way that other parts of the ancient world described it. This is a painting that he did of one type of this Chitahuri from ancient and modern accounts. And he showed me this called the Necklace of the Mysteries. It says a necklace, it's very, very heavy, copper, and it goes on your shoulders. How he keeps it on his shoulders, I'll never know, it's so heavy. And he uses it as the historian of the Zulu nation, the symbols hanging from it, to tell the story of Africa and the world in general. And pride of place on the front is a non-human entity with a willy in come and get me mode and a human woman. And I said to him, what's all that about? And he said, this is symbolic of the interbreeding of the Chitahuri and humans to create these hybrid bloodlines, these children of the serpent. And then I asked him, oh, by the way, that's copper now, but in the original, and this Necklace of the Mysteries, by the way, is mentioned in accounts 500 years old, and Credo reckons it's about 1,000 years old, and it has a flying saucer on it, very clearly, a flying saucer hanging from it, which the storytelling says that's how the Chitahuri came here. Anyway, this is copper now, but it used to be gold. Someone stole it, and they couldn't afford to put gold back, and that takes us to North Africa and Egypt, and the base story of the Egyptian myths, and that's the golden penis of Osiris, which all relates into this golden bloodline, this special bloodline. And when I said to Credo, why is it not reptilian, he said, because the Chitahuri, and this is a theme I've found all over the place, the Chitahuri said you must not portray us as we really are. Some people did, most people didn't. They had to do it symbolically, so they made it absolutely, obviously not human, but not reptilian for fear of the consequences. And when I was writing the new book, Human Race, Get Off Your Knees, I came across a work in progress, I think it's finished now, by a man called Pierre Sabac, and he was producing a book called The Murder of Reality. And Pierre Sabac spent 7 years nearly pouring through dictionaries. He's crazy about words and derivatives, pouring through dictionaries and what have you, all these different peoples and different languages and different eras. And he put together the fact that the language, the very language, if you follow the derivatives back from the language we use now and their origins, where the words came from, tell the story of this reptilian serpent god race taking over humanity, and also how they used to symbolize this race for reasons I've just said, not as they really were, but as eagles, as hawks, as owls, as angels. If you take the word angel back to its origin, in Sabac's research, you get a word meaning snake or serpent. And so we have the eagle on so many countries' flags and logos, including the United States most famously. You have the owls invariably with the goddess of Babylon, Semiramis or Ishtar. You have the story of the angels, especially the theme of the fallen angels, representing this reptilian race and interbreeding with humanity. And you have Horus, the son of God of Egypt, the virgin-born son, represented as a hawk, again with the reptilian imagery. This seraphim, one of the hierarchy of angels in Christian and Hebrew Jewish belief, seraphim word means snake or serpent if you take it back to its origin. You have the flying serpent disc, which is widely used in the ancient world. And another thing that they did was they symbolized the heavens as the upper ocean. We have the ocean that we have, obviously, and then you had the upper ocean, which was the heavens. And so they talked about the gods and the serpent gods coming in their heavenly boats through the upper ocean. And so you have a lot of marine symbolism, which doesn't relate to the sea, it relates to the upper ocean. And it's reading this. These bloodlines were known in the ancient world under different symbols and different codes, like children from heaven and earth, and children of the gods, children of the sky. And another big symbol of these gods, these serpent gods, were the watchers. They were called the watchers. This is widely found. And that's why there's an eye, as Credo Mutua confirmed, on that hand on the necklace of the mysteries. That's the watchers, that's the serpent gods. And that's why we have the eye on top of the pyramid, the all-seeing eye on the dollar bill, and why that is a massive Illuminati symbol in the secret society network. They are the gods overseeing the pyramid of control.